Hi, my name is Irene, and on this video we will learn how to bring CAD files, specifically AutoCAD files, into Revit. So let's get to it, shall we? Alright, when we start a new project in Revit, the most common scenario is that we will start with an existing structure. Either it is already a built space that we are remodeling, or we are working with drawings that either an engineer or an architect or a contractor has already developed and we're building on from them. In other words, there's usually going to be some reference information that we are going to be using as the base of our proposal. So the idea here is that instead of you having to painfully pick up each individual measurement on this existing structure and have to redraw it in Revit, you can bring an AutoCAD drawing of that proposal and use it as a tracing material. So in order to do that, I have this apartment floor plan that we're going to be bringing into Revit and using for reference. Whenever you want to bring a AutoCAD file into Revit, you will find all the tools that you need under the Insert tab. And specifically with CAD drawings, there are two ways that you can bring them into Revit. You can either link a CAD file or you can import a CAD file. In a future video, I will discuss what is the difference between these two options. But for the time being, we're going to treat them as equals because when it comes to the settings and the procedure, it is exactly the same. The difference comes more later down the road.
Same, but different, but still same.
So in this case, I'm going to be just using the Import CAD option. So all you have to do is click Import CAD. That's going to open your PC browser. So I am going to find my file. Here it is. And now here's the important thing. Because Autodesk is the maker of both AutoCAD and Revit, these two programs, although are very different, are designed to basically understand each other. So for the most part, when you are bringing an AutoCAD drawing into Revit, beyond selecting the project, you don't have to do much. So in this case, I'm just gonna go and click Open, and that's it. There is my AutoCAD drawing in Revit. Easy, lemon squeeze. Now, the most important thing that you need to make sure at this stage is that your drawing is to scale. And we can very quickly verify that by going back into the original CAD drawing and verifying some measurement. Let's say in this case, the thickness of this wall. So the thickness of this wall is 200 millimeters. I'm going to come back into my Revit drawing. The unit system is set up to Imperial, so I'm going to quickly use my project unit, which you bring up by pressing on your keyboard UN, and then I'm going to click here under length and switch to millimeters, just so we're working with the same units. And now I'm going to bring the measurement tool, quick key DI, and check my dimensions. Cool.
Oh, cool.
So that's it. Pretty much you're done. You can now start drawing. But what I want to discuss are some of the settings that you need to pay attention to, some of the options that you can modify before you bring that CAD drawing into Revit. So I am going to press Ctrl Z to undo the import, and I'm going to redo it this time. We're going to stop and linger a little bit so we can see the additional options. So Import CAD, select my condo project, and now what we want to do is we want to pay attention to these options here. So the first one is colors. So by default, your AutoCAD lines are going to come in exactly the same color that they are in AutoCAD. I usually find this very helpful because your Revit lines are always black, so it makes it a lot easier to identify which parts of the drawing are the CAD parts and which parts are the Revit parts. But in some cases, the colors of your AutoCAD drawing may not work with your Revit file, mainly due to the fact that your AutoCAD background is dark while your Revit background is white. So for example, if there's a lot of lines that are yellow or light green or light blue, it's going to be hard to read them when you bring them into Revit. So if that is the case, you have the option to switch. Instead of colors, you can either invert them, so it's going to switch them to something darker, or just go straight forward with black and white. So if I do that here and I say open, see, same drawing, but now my lines are black and white. So undo again. Another thing that you can do, if we go back to import CAD, is you can import specific layers. So by default, when you import a CAD drawing, it's going to come with all of its current layers. But if you check here, you can actually choose to specify which layers you want to bring into the drawing. And when you say open, here is going to give you a list of all of the layers. And I can then, for example, come here and say, well, I don't want to bring the furniture, and I don't want to bring in floor patterns, for example. So let's do that and say okay. And what's going to happen is that it's going to remove those layers as it brings my CAD drawing in. So that's especially handy because if you're working with architectural or engineering plans as your base, sometimes there will be information there that is completely irrelevant to what you're doing. Sometimes there will be a bunch of like dimensions or notes or information that you just don't need. So I find very handy that option just to clean your drawing a little bit before you begin. So undo, come back here to import CAD. The next option is one of the most important ones. Import units. So again, you don't have these problems so much when you're working from AutoCAD to Revit because both of them belong to Autodesk, and therefore they have both been designed to be compatible with each other. In other words, Revit does a pretty good job at reading the unit system that your CAD file is working on and converting it to whatever your Revit file currently is. But there will be exceptions. If the CAD drawing itself has been drawn incorrectly, in other words, whoever did it didn't really understand the unit system and then they just drew stuff randomly, when that drawing comes into Revit, those inconsistencies will remain. So you have to manually set the units. Another issue will be when you import CAD files that are not necessarily AutoCAD. Remember, CAD stands for Computer Assisted Drawing. It's not specifically AutoCAD. AutoCAD is one program that is a CAD. So in those cases, just to be on the safer side, a thing that you can do is manually set up what are the import units. So again, by default is in Auto Detect. But if I click here, I'm going to be able to manually set up the unit. Now, very important, what units are we setting up here? The units that you're going to be choosing here are whatever the units are on the original file. You're not saying, so for example, if my Revit file right now is in Imperial and my AutoCAD file is in millimeters, the unit that I'm going to set up here is millimeters. Revit doesn't need to know what unit it is set up to. It already does. So what you're going to be doing here is set up what unit the original file that you're bringing in is set up to. So in that case, here we would be talking about millimeters. One thing to keep into consideration is the fact that when AutoCAD is working in Imperial, whether you have it set up for feet and inches or fractional inches, the unit that you will set up here for the import will be inches regardless. Because even when you're working with feet and inches in AutoCAD, the default unit is inches. Another thing that is by default check on, and I just leave it that way because it works just fine, is the correct lines that are slightly off axis. This is something that drives me absolutely insane when I bring AutoCAD drawings into, for example, SketchUp. AutoCAD has this problem where you draw lines and you think that they're straight and they're fine, but they're not. They're just slightly crooked. And that slight crookedness can really ruin the quality and precision of your drawings when you start building them in 3D. So again, an absolute nightmare when you're working, for example, in SketchUp. Thank God, in Revit, it has an option that automatically fixes that problem. So again, by default, it's check on. The next thing is positioning. Now, this is an interesting one because what happens is that this has to do more with how we think about drawing. So when you're working in AutoCAD, a lot of times where you start drawing doesn't really matter. The origin of your CAD drawing is irrelevant. But when you're working in Revit, your origin is somewhat where the intersection between your north, south, east, west views are. So if I draw reference lines, so I'm just gonna go, well, I'm gonna draw reference planes, RP for the quick key, and I'm gonna draw 2 reference planes here. Your origin of your Revit drawing is gonna be somewhere around there. So if your CAD drawing, when you bring it, it turns out that it's like all the way, like 10 miles away from where the origin of your Revit drawing is, that is because in the CAD drawing, origins are something that most people don't care about or don't pay attention to. Now, there are a couple different ways that you can solve this issue. One is directly in AutoCAD. So I'm gonna come here to my AutoCAD drawing, and there's a couple things that I can do. One is I can take my drawing and I can say that I wanna move it, so M for move, and I'm gonna pick it up around the center, and now I'm going to type 0,0, which basically is going to allow me to move it to the origin. Another option that I could do is in some CAD drawings, you're gonna be able to see the origin of the file, which is gonna be a little X and Y arrow, and then you can pick it up and move it in place. But to be honest with you, I usually don't want to work with the CAD file for multiple reasons. One, you might be messing up something by accident without even noticing, but more importantly, sometimes you're not going to have access to AutoCAD, you just have Revit. So the easiest way to solve this issue is going back into Revit. When you go to bring in your CAD drawing, here under positioning, we're going to change this option here. By default, Revit is set up to auto origin to internal origin, which means that it's going to find the origin in the CAD file and it's going to match it to the origin in your Revit file. We don't want that. So instead, what you want to do is drop this menu here and you're going to choose either of the manual options. So manual origin is going to bring the CAD drawing, but you're going to be holding it from whatever that origin is. And again, in a lot of CAD drawings, that origin can be, nowhere to be found, so to speak. So the best option out of these is manual center. What manual center is going to do is Revit is going to detect the entire set of lines that make that CAD drawing, and it's going to kind of like find the center of that drawing. And when you bring the CAD file, it's going to be holding it from that kind of like middle ground of your drawing. And manual means that you're going to get to manually place that drawing. So I'm going to select manual center. So I'm going to select my condo file and open. And again, I have my layers to select. I'm going to leave all of them on this time. But now see what's happening. The file is not automatically placed in your drawing. Instead, you are holding it. And if you look, my arrow key, my cursor, has been placed somewhat around the center area of the drawing. So now I can, for example, put it closer here or there or whatever I want it to be. Click, and now it has been placed. So you get a lot more control over the drawing. And then finally, I'm going to undo here. You have the option of what level the drawing is placed at. So by default, the drawing will be placed on level 1. But if you click on this arrow here, you can choose other options. So for example, if I go here on level 2 and I go import CAD, now you're gonna see that my level has changed. Now I am on level 2, but I can also choose level 1. So this is going to give you a little bit more freedom. Another thing that you can do is you can bring your reference drawings on elevated views. By default, we always think about floor plans, but sometimes the reference information that you're going to be given will include elevations. This is particularly common when you're working with buildings that have unusual roofs that you have to replicate. So in those cases, all you have to do is come on your elevations on the project browser. Let's say we're going to choose the south elevation, and while the elevation is active, you're going to go to Import CAD and select. And even though it says here that it's placing it in level 1, because this option here is checked on that says orient to view, the option of level 1 will be overwritten, and instead you're going to be placing it on the elevated view. So if I go here and I say open, okay, see, now I can place it. If I go here on my 3D view, you're gonna see that it is elevated. So this is not just for floor plans, which I find particularly handy. And that really covers all of the options to import CAD. Now that you know them, again, you don't necessarily have to change these settings each and every time. The whole idea is to have options. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like. You can also subscribe for more videos, and I will see you next time. Have a good one. Bye.